When we talk about professional marks in all of these PE exams, regardless of which exam you take, professional marks are essential. They may be not so essential in strategic business reporting because there are only 4 of them, but for all the other exams, they are. Why? Well, because you have 100 marks in your exam and 20 of them are professional. And judging by the fact that before, when there were not so many professional marks, people would score marginal marks on their professional exams, such as, let's say, 50, 55, maybe, not 70, not 80. So this means that if you just completely lose professional marks, there is just no chance for you of scoring your pass rate, right? So you need to take this professional marks. The good thing is that it is actually almost impossible to score technical marks without scoring professional marks, because you got your technical marks for the ability to explain your answer, to explain your thoughts. And when you do that, you earn professional marks. But there are useful tricks that we can apply here to ensure that we score professional marks. And I know that because, well, I've been teaching these exams for, well, since 2015 or 2016, and I'm a tutor for, I have experience with several working knowledge providers, including Platinum One, so I could have to attend those meetings when they tell us, the ACCA itself tells us about professional marks and what students did good or poorly. So I know what is that the examiner is thinking that they're testing. So let us start from that. Well, from time-wise perspective, okay, so we are going to talk about the main ideas of how to score marks in any of your professional exams. That is very important. That is going to be the base. Then we are going to talk about professional marks for the exams other than SBL and SBR. Then we will talk about SBL and finally about SBR. But even if you do not take this exam at the moment, it's still important for you to listen just for your future success. So when we talk about professional exams, the overriding idea of any professional paper is that you are an employee, you are an advisor who receives huge compensation, like you receive tons of money, and companies hire you to provide some insight. And they do not pay you for just citing the Wikipedia. They can go into Google or ChatGPT or whatever source they want and look for the model, for the formula themselves. No, what they want you to do, they want you to apply the knowledge to the organization itself with all of these characteristics. And just to give you an example, well, okay, so a long time ago, me and my younger sister went to France, to Paris, and she got food poisoning, and it was a disaster because she was puking blood. That's how bad it was. And we called a doctor, and the doctor came, and he didn't have any pills on them. And well, he just gave us the diagnosis, and we had to wait for them for 2 hours and pay 200 euros. Well, and the doctor said, okay, look, your sister's eyes are not dry. Well, your sister's lips are dry. So this means that the dehydration has started. So you need to rehydrate her. However, the eyes are not dry. This means that the dehydration is within 5%. This means that it is enough to do these procedures, but you do not need to go and engage in some drastic measures. Okay, so this, your sister has a temperature like that, this means that, and this means that you should do that. And you know what? I was willing to pay this $200 because I got a result that was specific to the case, that was specific to my sister, who in my eyes was dying almost. And I thought it relevant to me. If the doctor instead came to me and they just said that you do not need to do anything, just take this pill, go to the pharmacy and buy it, I would not be happy. I would not be happy with the 200 euros spent, and I would never recommend that doctor ever again. So the same with the business and you working as a consultant. If you just state the theory, you do not get money. You might get the money according to the contract, but you will not be liked by your employer, by your customer. But if you cite whatever is going with the company, okay, so for example, look, you are working in retail industry. This means that you had cash problems. This means that you have these shareholders. This means that. Then this means that in the eyes of people who pay for your services, you are actually explaining them what is meant, and they are more willing to pay you a huge amount of money. And that is what ACCA wants from you. ACCA wants you to promote the importance of ACCA qualification by being a good employee, by being a good consultant. So ACCA says, when we test you, when we qualify you, we want you to show these qualities so that you would apply them at your real work. And again, so what does it mean? It means that regardless of the paper you take, what you need to do, you need to cite the scenario. Well, I mean, you can just copy and paste that and maybe correct a bit so that, you know, it's English. Then you cite what it means in terms of theory, and then you give a conclusion. Well, let me give you an example from strategic business reporting. So let us take IS 16, and IX 16 is about your property, plant, equipment. So the question is whether you should capitalize the cost of training employees to operate that machinery that you bought. You say that the company paid that much money for training that employees. So you cite whatever happened. Then you say what it means from the point of view of the standard. So you cite, however, according to IS 16, only the expenses that are needed to bring the asset to the location and condition can be capitalized, and training of employees is not that. And then you give the conclusion according to the standard. So, well, as such, the training cost should not be capitalized. If we talk about, let's say, advanced performance management exam, when you need to talk about management, you would cite something like, the business is owned by brothers who do not want to participate in the management, and instead they want to serve in Australia. What does it mean from the in terms of the theory? This means that although they have high power because they can vote out management, they have little interest because they do not they are not willing to look into the operations of the company. And the conclusion, as such, they this means that from the point of view of Mendelow's matrix. So that is how we write your answers. That is like the base case, regardless of what exam you take. And you need to do that because, well, later we will see how that is going to correspond with how you earn professional marks. Then, this is a tricky thing about the exam, that in the professional level exam, you are not required to provide the right answer. Well, literally, you do not need to write the right answer. Why? Well, because the correct answer can give you, well, maybe 1 mark, if any. Yes, but if you look at the question is usually formulated for something around 9 marks. So what you get your marks for looking at the scenario and saying, on one hand, on the other hand. On one hand, it's good. On the other hand, it is not good. On one hand, it works. On the other hand, it does not work. On one hand, it is beneficial. On the other hand, it is not beneficial. Well, this is especially important for this knowledge-based exams, such as well, when we talk about strategic business reporting, you are asked to provide some accounting treatment, and there is some tricky situation. Well, for example, you do not know whether this should be recognized as intangible asset or not, or when we talk about cryptocurrencies, for example. So you say, on one hand, it looks like cryptocurrency, and this citation means that it does not. This citation from the text, this part of the scenario, means that maybe it is. This means that maybe it is not. And again, we use citation. What does it mean in terms of theory and conclusion? So you score marks by saying what each and every piece of scenario means. And it doesn't really matter whether your answer in the end is do or do not do, right or wrong, good or bad, recognize or do not recognize, because that is only 1 mark, if any. And usually, if you look at the marking scheme is going to provide you more marks that you can score. So you would be given marking scheme something like that. So for example, benefits up to, let's say, 6 marks, drawbacks up to 6 marks, and the total maximum, let's say, 10 marks. So like, by providing your thoughts, you could theoretically get 12 marks, but you have a cap of 10 marks, meaning that even if your conclusion is not right, by commenting on more parts of the scenario, it will be possible for you to get the highest mark. Okay, now the next one is that you need to explain. You are given marks for the logical thoughts. So as such, you need to use the words because, that is because, blah, 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 as such, it means the following. Blah, 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 therefore it means that, because you need to give this logical thoughts, because you are given marks and paid huge amount of money for your ability to draw conclusions. So when we talk about how to write an answer to score marks, these are the basic ideas that you need to remember. So, and I want you to see the following examples of how we need to formulate the answer. The thing is that when you write something, you need to make sure that your conclusion is in the same paragraph as in as your presumptions and your citations from the text. So broadly speaking, when we talk about how the answer is formulated, it can be formulated as, okay, this is the number of sentences that support this conclusion. This is the number of sentences that supports the other side, the other view of the story, and that is the answer. And that is how you often see the model answer be formulated. But from the perspective of the real exam, of the stress factor, of that inability of the students sometimes express their thoughts so that the person who reads them can understand what is written there, I strongly advise you to give the conclusion right after your thoughts that you are trying to explain. And as such, please pay attention that it is in the same paragraph. And let me give you an example. So look, the examiner is reading your answer and they're reading it like that. It is raining. Okay, that is the end of the paragraph. Is there a conclusion? No, it's just a citation from that scenario. So we do not get any marks for that. It is cold outside. Is there any conclusion? Is there any logical thought? No, it's just something stating the fact. I need to put warm waterproof shoes. Oh, okay, you need to put warm waterproof shoes, and that is what is in the answer, is like the conclusion. But in this very sentence, we do not have any justification of this conclusion, so it will not win any marks. Okay, and what if a person wrote something like that? It is raining. No, conclusion, right? So no marks. It is cold outside. I need to put warm shoes. That is absolutely correct, because yeah, we can see that it is cold outside. I need to put warm shoes. Yes, we need to put warm shoes if it is cold. So that brings you 1 mark. Let me give you another example. It is raining. No conclusion, no mark. It is cold outside. I need to put warm waterproof shoes. That is not technically correct, because if it is cold outside, it is not necessarily that you need warm waterproof shoes. It may be you just, it might as well be that you just need warm shoes, just normal warm shoes. So that does not bring you any marks. And if you wrote your sentence like that, it is raining. That is one idea. It is cold outside. It is cold outside. That is the other citation from the scenario. Good. Keep reading the paragraph. I need to put warm waterproof shoes. Oh, that is a conclusion. And look, that conclusion correctly concludes the 2 sentences that we written before. Oh, so that is going to bring you 2 marks. See, that is how your work is marked. As such, please make sure that you not only state that you use the words such as therefore, because, well, ideally, I would put here therefore or something as such to stress that this is a conclusion. And please make sure that your conclusion is within the same paragraph. And that is what we're going to talk about in professional marks. So please stay with me, okay? We need to start with that so that you are not confused later. All right, the next thing that you need to know is to mind the verb of the question. Look, there is a verb list. List means, well, just name them. And that was applicable for exams such as assurance, like format F8, when you had to list the procedures to test, for example, cash and cash equivalents. Yes, and for that, for list, you would get 0.5 marks. But if your verb is not list, then just listing stuff will not bring you marks. And in professional level exams, it is most likely that your verb is going to sound like evaluate. What does evaluate mean? Evaluate means that if you have numbers that relate to this question, you need to calculate and need to give conclusion. If there are no numbers, then this means that you need to talk about positive and negative aspects of something. Evaluate the use of this model. Well, on one hand, this model works in this very case, in this very company. So we cite the scenario and give conclusions to citations. On the other hand, it does not work. On one hand, this Black-Scholes option pricing model is great. On the other hand, it does not work. Assess is more or less like evaluate, but it is not as strong. Usually assess is followed by assess the appropriateness. When we talk about assess the appropriateness, we need to understand that there is no model, that there is no technique that is good 100% of the way. So the example that I like to show is assess the appropriateness of red dress. Assess the appropriateness of me wearing that red dress. Okay, the red dress cannot be appropriate or not appropriate by itself. It is appropriate and not appropriate in the situation. Okay, what is the situation? I'm going on a picnic for my corporate event. Okay, let's assess the appropriateness of me wearing that red dress. Okay, that is my poor drawing skills. So on one hand, this red dress really becomes me, and I will look the best at the pictures. So I should wear this dress on this corporate event. On the other hand, this dress well, I cannot wash it in the washer. So after the picnic, I will obviously, well, there will be some stains, some, I don't know, grease from barbecue. So I will have to take it to the dry cleaning, and it's going to cost me a fortune. So no, because it's costly. On one hand, in this very dress, it is easy for me to move my arms and legs, and if I need to participate in, you know, some events, some competitions, then I can be the first. So on one hand, it allows me to move. On the other hand, it is quite hot in it. So if the weather is too warm, then I just will be all sweaty. On one hand, this dress is good because what else is good about this dress? Because well, it covers all my body and I will not have any mosquito bites. Also, that is my view of mosquito. That is a scary mosquito. On the other hand, it is bad because, well, I have no idea why it is bad, okay? So, but you get the point, right? So you need to say on one hand, on the other hand, on one hand, on the other hand. And in the end, quite often you can draw different conclusions. So one person say, what the hell, we'll wear it. And the other person can say, no, there's too much hustle. So no. So that is assess the appropriateness. Discuss means that we need to it's kind of assess the appropriateness, but assess the appropriateness and evaluate implies that there's going to be some balance between yes and no's. And discuss means that we just need to say what each and every proposition in the scenario means, and as such it might well be that our answer is going to be imbalanced. So we are going to talk only about bad stuff or only about good stuff, or may like the majority of our sentences will be about good or bad. So discuss, it's not so balanced, maybe not balanced. Another verb that we might be using is illustrate. Illustrate is when you need to give examples. Preferably, they come from your scenario. This is the best case scenario. However, it may be that they have to come from your idea of how you understand the theory. Well, for example, when we talk about taxes, you can be asked to give examples of, for example, tax exemptions that can be applied here. If we talk about audit, there may be some audit procedures that can be applied here, and we will illustrate how they will be applied here. However, the question that you need to ask yourself, are you sure that the question asks you to give a piece of advice? Is there anything that tells you, advice, suggest what the company should do? Because quite often it's not the case. And when you say should, you lose your marks. And you know that in real life, we should not only criticize, we should suggest. Forget that. When we talk about professional level exams, if you're not asked to suggest, you do not suggest, because you will lose your marks. Why is that? Well, because if someone comes to a company and asks them to evaluate something that they have, let's say, controls, then this is about evaluation, and the suggestion. For suggestion, you need to pay a separate bill, and this is a separate report that a person needs to write. So that is one. So please be very attentive, but of course that can differ slightly between the exams. There can be verbs that stay a little bit aside, but I would like to know them. These verbs are comment and briefly comment on the result of calculation. So briefly comment means that it's 1 mark, maybe 2, not more. Comment, it's something between 2 and 3 marks. Usually when we evaluate, when someone asks us to evaluate, we need to make a conclusion in the end. So for example, NPV is positive. And when we say positive, we say slightly positive or significantly above 0 or below 0, slightly below 0. And this means the following. Okay, but still, if you are to briefly comment, then this is something that you need to do within 2 marks. And that is very important. I mean, like, this is going to be a thought that, oh, spoiler alert, that's maybe you've never think about that before, but that is the key to your success. The key to your success is that when you took your fundamental level, you were asked, write as many sentences as you can, write as much as you can, because you are not punished for own ideas. And that was absolutely relevant for fundamental level exams. Why? That is because in fundamental level exams, you have many test questions, and test questions are not that time consuming as written questions. And as such, you would have enough time to write, well, just in case, it may be that. That is not the case with professional level exams. Why? Ask anyone you know how much time they have left at the end of the exam. Ask another question. How many questions they were not able to attempt, not to solve, but to attempt during the exam. And usually you will hear something that if the exam has 3 questions, for example, like in the case of my beloved APM, there are 3 questions, 50 marks, 25 and 25. Usually people get only half of the last question that they left for the last done, and they have no time to answer, let's say, question 3, part C, and part B. That is going to happen for each and every exam. Think about yourself, about your past experience with professional level exams. Have you had any time left? No, you have not. Meaning that for that time allowance that you've got, let it be 3 hours and 15 minutes, like the usual case, you have the ability to write that many sentences, because this is just physically possible to write that many sentences. And if you start writing something that is not needed in the first question, so instead of spending this amount of time, you spend that amount of time, then this means that you are not able to attempt, not solve correctly, but attempt one of the questions. And the more time you waste on part, let's say A, the less time you have for part B. And this means that you will need to score 50 marks, not out of 100 marks, but out of 80 or 90 marks that you've attempted. And that is really hard to do, meaning that you need to pay attention to the marks and write only according to the marking scheme. And that is why this understanding of comment and briefly comment is important. So let's say briefly comment says that it's 2 marks tops, so it's 4 sentences tops. For comment, it's 6 sentences tops. Well, depending on whether they are long or whether they are short. So that is like the base case technique for writing your answer. And now we are going to come to the professional marks. So for papers, we start with papers other than SVR and SVL, because they have much in common. Okay, so when we talk about professional marks, so starting September 2022, right? I'm always confused with what is the year. We have 20 out of 100 professional marks. What are these professional marks given for? They are given for your communication, analysis, evaluation, skepticism, and commercial acumen. Let us talk about how to score the marks. Communication. Communication are professional marks that are given for report format and structure. So in questions such as, let's say, advanced financial management, advanced performance management, you will have your part A question that says write a report. This means that you need to write a report. So you literally get 1 mark for saying report to, and who is that? To the CEO of some ABC company. Then you say from, and advisor or accountant, please do not write your name. Then you say the date, and there should not be any specific, any date that is personal. So you can just write the exam date or just put access. Then you write subject. And subject is something that fits within one line. If it does not fit one line, it is not a subject, it is an introduction. So usually you can write a subject that sounds more or less like the exam you're attempting. So for example, when we're talking about professional performance management, in question A, there are 50 marks. And of course, the questions that are there, they come from different parts of the syllabus. And it's really hard to unite them under a single heading and a single subject. So we just write on performance management. If we talk about financial management exam, so you will have NPV, then you will need to talk about, let's say, dividend policy and so on, because there are 50 marks and the examiner is thinking, how can I write questions for 50 marks? So they have to pull the topics from different parts of the syllabus. So for advanced financial management, you can say on financial management at ABC company. Then you need to write introduction. Introduction is when you take the requirement and rewrite that in, you write that as a text. So for example, if the requirement says calculate NPV and comment on the acceptability of the project, and comment on the risk structure of the company, so you would say, this report provides NPV calculation. Then it talks about acceptability of the project. Then it discusses a risk profile of the company. This is followed by, after that, then, and finally, so you use this glue words such as then, after that, finally, this is followed, and so on. Then you need to write your answer. And when you write your answer, you need to put the kind of like the name of the sub-questions, not the latter, the index of the sub-question. So for example, if your requirement says ABCD, so it will be ABCD. If it says 1, 2, 3, then it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And you need this caption as in report style. A report style means that there should be either a verb like noun. A verb like noun is something like, let's say, NPV calculation. Calculation is a verb derived noun, calculation, or for example, control management or evaluation. Evaluation is a noun that comes from verb. Or alternatively, you can just start with the word on NPV in the company, on NPV calculation, on the use of NPV in the company, on the use of the model. So it's either that or that usually, and then you write your answer. And in the end of the very, very question, so big question, which asks you to provide a report, you would make a conclusion. So to sum up, and then the conclusion will look very much like your introduction. So there will be no new words, there will be no nothing new. Everything is supposed to be in your part of, of this answer. So there you say, to sum up, NPV is positive, so the project should go ahead. However, other factors should be considered. The risk mitigation strategies are appropriate, or risk mitigation strategies need a final revision, and so on. So that is your report and form and structure. And what is important there is that you use headings. Don't forget to use these headings and subheadings so that your answer is structured. That is how you get your mark. So basically, for your caption, for your report part, you get 1 mark. Oh, that's the easiest mark. You can score them without actually starting preparing for the exam. Then you get somewhat like 1 mark for this structure. You need to use heading and subheading. So like, let's say within part I, you might be asked to talk about advantages and disadvantages. So you would have a subheading that is called advantages, and you will have a subheading that is called disadvantages. All right, so that is heading, subheading, introduction. Then you get your marks for the effectiveness of communication. Effectiveness of communication means that you are answering the question set, not the question that you think that is given to you. That is actually a pain for the student, because when we ask students what were the question in the exam, they tell the name of the theory, but actually this is not the theory, but the application of the theory that is tested. Anyways, we need to see how the question is formulated and make sure that we are answering the right question. So if the question is asking about advantages, we talk about advantages only. If it is asking about disadvantages, we talk only about disadvantages. If it is asking about implementation problems, we talk about implementation problems and not the problems of the use of the model. And also, if we are asked specifically, and usually that is the criterion that is given in your exam, in your scenario. So in your scenario, there will be something. At this very stage, the CEO has suggested that only 3 indicators need to be offered. So if it is said that only 3 indicators need to be offered, doesn't matter how bad the indicators you offered are. You need to offer 3, not 2, not 4, not this or that. 3 indicators exactly. If you're asked to offer not more than 3, then it may be 1, 2, 3, but not 4. If you offer 4 indicators, you lose your professional mark on communication, and that is so very sad. Please do not do that. So please read that. Please read the question specification that is in the scenario, not only the part that is in the requirement. Also, if no metrics need to be offered, so if you're not asked for metrics, and even more, if the question specifically tells you that no metrics are needed, or for example, no discussion of disadvantages are needed, then if you start doing that, you lose your professional marks. That is sad, because you lose by doing something, by making some extra effort. So that is how it works. And what is important is that this relates to each and every question in your exam. The report structure, this relates only to the question that asks you specifically to write a report. If the question does not write a report, then the layout, so the use of headings and subheadings, the effectiveness of communication is going to matter. So only the report had an introduction and a conclusion are something that can be or cannot be dependent on the question. All right, the next type of metrics, types of aspects that we need to remember about communication is style, language, and clarity of your justification. So appropriate tone of report of response. Quite often, students say that that they manipulated the records, that they stole, that they did something bad. Well, please do not do not accuse, try not to accuse. If you can, try saying that it can be suggested, it may as well be, and so on. So please have a proper tone. A proper tone means that we also need to use the third-person communication style. So this means that we say the company, the business, the organization, the management, the board, the employees, and so on. We do not say something like I, no I. We do not say we, no, we do not say us. All right, so that is in like the company, the report, the management. In some older versions of exams, you might see a model answer, this I, we, and us. But please do not do that. Presentation of calculation. So that is absolutely important that you are going to use, if you're given spreadsheets, not only the text editor, but spreadsheets, that you use spreadsheets for calculations, unless they are super simple spoiler alert. Unless they're super simple, unless they are just A divided by B equals C. So please do not calculate NPV or IRR in your text document, in your text processor. So when we say about some calculation, so you would write something. As seen in Appendix 1 of spreadsheets or in spreadsheets. And then you write the conclusion on the results. So for example, NPV is positive, meaning, and so on. And in spreadsheets, you will have something like that, Appendix 1, and the name of whatever you are doing, like let's say NPV calculation. And when you do the calculations need to be properly presented, meaning that you do not just do A2 plus B1 divided by C3. Now, if you look at model answer at ACCA model answer, you will see that they put all parts of the calculations in a separate row so that it is seen how that is calculated. So for example, when we talk about let's say what can we say? What can we talk about? Oh, let's calculate some cost of some unit. So we would write materials, let's say $10. Then we will write labor, let's say $12. Then we would write overheads, and let's say $23, and then we are going to get $45. So we are going to write like that. We will not just write 10 plus 12 plus 23 in a single cell. That is how you are going to lose money. Please do not do that. So that is about presentation of calculations. And when you write Appendix 1, Appendix 2, these appendices, they have nothing to do with the appendices that are in your scenario. So in your scenario, for example, you might be given Appendix 1, balance sheet, Appendix 2, a P&L, but your spreadsheet is different from that. You cannot refer to the appendices. You cannot name these appendices that are given to you in the scenario as Appendix 1, 2, and 3. Why? The idea is as follows. Let us assume that you are auditors. Yes, well, I was an auditor once. So as an auditor, we had some working files, and these working files, they were named in a certain way. So for example, if I had cash section, then it would be C1 and let's say bank statements reconciliation. Then it would be C2 and let's say subsequent payments analysis, and so on. And these references, this Appendix 1, Appendix 2, they were internal. They were never distributed to the client. And whatever was distributed to the client is a printed version of report with maybe some attachments, maybe appendix, which would be, let's say, the comments of auditor, if that was in the audit engagement or whatever. So these attachments, they were named separately and they would be referring only to the report that we submitted. So let's say when we talk about the notes that were there, so notes 1 to 3, they had the references that were only within that report. No, they didn't have any references to our internal working papers. And here is the same logic. So as such, your numbering of appendices starts within a single spreadsheet, and it's going to restart at 1 in each and every question. Not sub-question, but question. So for question 1, you will have appendix 1, 2, 3 for your parts A, B, C. For appendix for question 2, you will start with 1 again. You need to have appropriate use of CBE tools. This mostly concerns those who take advanced financial management. So when I was a student, we had to learn by heart IRR formula. But now this IRR formula is written in your functionality on your CBE platform. And unless you are asked to illustrate the calculation of IRR, you just have to, you absolutely must use the formula that is provided by your computer-based exam tools. So you would write that our formula, and you would refer to some cells in brackets. So that is how we do that. It is important that your answer is easy to follow and understand, so that you have a logical structure. We do not really rely on that stress factor and so on, but you do remember that I told you that you have to have citation, conclusion right away. That is how you have better chances of ensuring that your answer is easy to read. We'll try not to blame, as I already told you. And you know what is important, talking about style, language, and clarity, to acknowledge that regardless of whether this is a question or B question, you have to write some formal communication. So when we talk about 25-mark questions or 20-mark questions, depending on the exam, you will not have to write a report there, but whatever you're writing like some sort of not report, but like a memo. And in there, you do not need to make any formatting, but as this is an official document, you're writing that to the CEO who has offered your services. So please, no, nothing like that. So please do not use this cryptography as this hieroglyphs when you write your answer. You need to use words. Your result should be appropriate text. So that these are marks on communication. And now we are going to talk about analysis and evaluation. So the marks are given to you for appropriate use of data in appendix. Oh, that is so unfair. So this is a mark that is given to you for basically your ability to solve the question. So for example, if part B asks you to calculate NPV, if you calculate NPV, then you get this professional marks because, well, yes, indeed, you took working capital, you took investment, you took, like, let's say, tax, and meaning that if you get your technical marks, this is the mark that you score automatically. But if for some reason you did not approach the question because, for example, you were short in time or you forgot how to calculate NPV, then you do not get the mark. So it's kind of like doubling, like in board games and card games, like you have some card that doubles your result. Well, this is the card. The next would be whether the report measures performance towards the mission and objectives and in light of best practice. That is something that relates to advanced performance management exam, which is my beloved exam. Because even though I'm also a tutor for SPR and IFM, so this is APM is something that I love the most and where professional marks mean the most. So the thing is that APM students, those who are ever planning to pass it, take and pass it. So when you are given a report which you need to evaluate, the thing is that report is there for a reason. And usually if we talk about top level report, the reason is to make sure that the company reaches its mission, reaches its goals or objectives. So we start with saying that useful performance report is aligned with the mission and objective of the company. Then we break mission in parts. So we say the mission of the ABC company can be broken down as follows. Let's say to provide exceptional value to shareholders, to encourage the training and development of employees, and to provide best quality service to their customers. So that is how we do that. Then your assessment needs to be balanced and reasoned. And remember, this first half an hour of this lecture, I spent saying to you that you need to write citation, and then you need to write what it means from the point of view of theory, and then you need to write a conclusion. So that is important, not only for you to get technical marks, so that you do not list, so that you evaluate, discuss, or assess, but also to get this professional mark for your analysis and evaluation. The use of much greater than or only slightly than. So look, you calculated something, right? And for the sake of argument, let it be NPV. Well, because you took F9 financial management, so you know what NPV is. And the thing is that when you comment on your result, you need to not only say that it is greater than 0 or smaller than 0, or this, let's say, NPV is greater than the other projects or smaller than the other projects. You need to say much greater or only slightly bigger. And you compare always with the investment. Well, you need to find some basis for comparison. If it's not about NPV, you may compare that in your hand. You may compare that to revenue. So if you see that, let's say, LPV of the project that is given is, let's say, 10,000, and 10,000 does not say anything. 10,000 for me as an individual is a huge amount of money. So I would like to get into the project that is going to bring me $10,000 of NPV. But if we talk about a company of the size of Coca-Cola, then this is a marginal result. Yes, well, if we talk about the investment, let's say 1 million. So we need to say much greater than or only slightly greater than or smaller than. Okay, so these are analysis and evaluation. Well, the next important part is skepticism. Skepticism is given, the marks for skepticism are given to you for your use of however. Oh, this, however, is a great technique for you to score marks, because if your question is for 9 marks, then, well, ultimately you need to have 9 thoughts that are justified in something between 9 to 18 sentences. And well, when you need to justify something, sometimes you can run out of thoughts, and then you use however. So, however, what can you say? However, well, however is usually about something that will not work. So, for example, company is listed, and as such, it should pay dividends according to its dividend policy, and it can not take large portion of cash for new investment. Or, however, the company is owned by a family, and family depends on the dividends as the main source of their income, and as such, the shareholders will not like to take excessive risk. However, the company has cash problems, and as such, it may as well be that, let's say, providing a discount to customers is not feasible at the moment, even though it will increase revenue and as such profits. Also, the skepticism would be for you noting that we have insufficient or not 100% relevant data. So you might say that mission is only partly measured by the proposed indicator. This is something that you're going to do in your advanced performance management exam. To measure mission in all aspects would require too many indicators, and that would lead to information overload. Or when we talk about audit and assurance, you might say that that would lead to the well, that would provide better assurance. However, we need to acknowledge the fact that it would mean greater staff cost, and they shifted deadlines. So you need to acknowledge something that goes wrong. Also, skepticism would be that the example of skepticism would be that the idea is good, but there may be problems with implementation. So managers may not be ready, or they may be reluctant to change. You can apply skepticism in a number of ways. So, for example, you might say that maybe the data that is given to you is just the data that is easy to extract and not the data that is needed. Maybe the strategies that were offered by the board and those by strategic board and those that are easier to implement, and not those that would give company the accents. So that is how we apply skepticism in our questions. The next aspect would be commercial acumen. Commercial acumen means that we need to be able to apply commercial knowledge throughout our exam. So it's going to be citation of the scenario. So by citing the scenario, not only you are able to get your technical marks, because technical marks are given for you for your application of knowledge to the specific company, specific problem, but also it will give you your commercial acumen marks. For citing industry specific. So if you are told, for example, that the company is engaged in car industry, so this means that the company will be heavily reliant on quality. If the company comes from fashion, then what they need fast changing designs. So this means that they would be willing to minimize the inventory because it can go out of fashion soon and as such become obsolete. You are given marks for saying on one hand that this is right, on one hand the concerns of the director valid, however on the other hand it's not right. So this on one hand, on the other hand thing can be treated from different aspects of your professionalism. If you are asked to suggest something, the suggestions are appropriate. So for example, you cannot suggest me as an individual to advertise my services on the billboard, because I will just not have enough money to pay for that, or buy TV commercial. Or if I got money and advertise on the TV commercial, I will just do not have capacity to manage the quantity of clients that are going to come to ask for my services. So that is commercial acumen that we need to know about. Oh, overwhelming, I know. So these were the marks, the professional marks that you are going to get for all of the exams other than SBL and SBR. For the rest of the exam, it's pretty much the same, where there are some specifics. We are going to talk about them. It's going to be a little bit faster because you already know their idea, but still. So the problem with this SBL exam is that, oh my God, it is for 4 hours. And it is meant that actually you do not spend all of the time writing the answer, but instead you spend time on reading the scenario and planning one. So that is actually very important because, well, as we've already discussed, you just cannot waste your time writing something that is not asked. And 20 professional marks are going to be given not for something extra, but on how you write the answer. So the same as in the previous exams. So communication marks are going to be given to you for your ability to express yourself clearly and convincingly through the appropriate medium. Medium means the means of communication, while being sensitive to the needs of intended audience. Commercial acumen is something that is given for you to show the awareness of wider business and external factors affecting the business, using commercially sound judgment and insight to resolve issues and exploit opportunities. Analysis are given, the marks for analysis are given to you for thoroughly investigating and researching information from a variety of sources that are given to you and logically processing it with a view to consider it for recommended appropriate action. Science scary, right? We will go to the example, so please do not be scared just yet. Evaluation are given to you for carefully addressing situation, proposals, and arguments in a balanced way, using professional and ethical judgment to predict future outcomes and consequences as a basis for sound decision making. And skepticism is to probe deeply into underlying reasons for issues and problems, to question facts, opinions, and assertions, and to challenge information presented of decision making. So as you can see from this formulation, from this definition, it's mostly the same as we did in the previous part. So, but what is important? The important is the grading that is given to you. So the examiner, the marker, is going to read your answer, and then they are going to give you marks based on how the following the professional marks that were promised to you. And let me give you an example of professional marks in SBL. Professional marks for demonstrating communication skills and ensuring that the statement solves the key issues arising from the bribery allegations and is satisfactory to both the stakeholders of DSB and NUSA. So that is 2 marks. Another example, so in SBL, professional marks are given in chunks of 2. Professional skill marks are available for demonstrating analytical skills relating to division's environment. Professional skill marks are available for demonstrating evaluation skills relating to neural division's performance. 4 marks is quite rare. And professional marks are for demonstrating commercial acumen skills in ensuring that the statement explains the key role of the CEO as requested and is satisfactory to both stakeholders and of DSB and NUSA. Okay, so look, we are given here either 2 or 4 marks, and when we are going to be marked, 0 marks will be given if your answer does not address this professional marks at all. The full professional mark is going to be given to you if the answer is addressing the issue very well. If it is quite well, but not fantastic, then you are going to be given 2/3 of the marks that are promised. So it's either 2/3 of 2 marks, so it's 175, 166, or 2/3 of 4 marks, which is 2 and 66. And if you are not doing that very well, but doing that at least somehow, you will be given 1/3 of the marks that were promised to you. So 2/3 of the marks, or 4/3, if you were promised 2 marks, so you will get something like 0.66. If you were promised 4 marks, then you will get something like 1.33. So that is how you do that in SBL. SBL is tricky and it's very special and it's very different, but the idea of you scoring those analytical marks, evaluation marks, commercial, is the same as we've discussed in the first part about how the marks are allocated for, let's say, common ordinary exams. And where you need to answer your question is in the same way as we discussed how your answer should be presented. Now, a little bit left, so just bear with me a little bit longer. Professional marks in strategic business reporting. Well, with our strategic business reporting, professional marks are going to be awarded for the quality of ethical discussions, or they may be rewarded for the quality of the discussion. And please pay attention to what is the part that these professional marks are referring to. So what is the idea? If you are said that you are given 2 professional marks for part 2 of sub-question I of this question, then I would really suggest that you go to the question. So if, for example, you are short in time and you think about which part of the question to attempt and not to attempt the one that gives you professional marks. Well, quality of discussion, what does it mean? It means like all of the first part that we've attempted when we talked about that you need to use citation, then you need to talk about, spoiler alert, citation, that you need to talk about the theory, so what it means, what is the line of the standard you're applying, and then accounting conclusion. Recognize, do not recognize, debit, credit, expense, and so on. If the question is about whether this should be recognized or not, should be recognized as that or not, so you will need to think about, you need to analyze, so you will be given Professional marks on saying on one hand, and the ability to talk about the scenario, and on the other hand. Alrighty, in very rare circumstances, your professional marks will be given to you for your ability to reference the relevant IFRS standards. If your professional marks are going to be about that, if they specifically say that you need to reference IFRS standards, then this is a huge hint that there will be several of them, and most likely it will be something about IS 8, which is the change in accounting policies, estimates and errors, and IS 10, which is subsequent events. So please pay attention, and then you need to reference to the standards, but please never in SBR say that this is according to IFRS, because your full exam is about IFRS. So there is just no use of saying that. It's really unprofessional saying that according to IFRS, and it is really unprofessional to say obviously. Please do not use the word obviously. Alrighty, so that is what you need to do. And when we talk about ethical discussion, I know that many students are afraid of ethical questions, and here's a short bonus, and it relates not only to SBR, because actually there's ethical principles. They are tested in the variety of exams. So for example, they can happen in SBL or in audit. So the ethical principles are professional competence and due care. This is that you know your stuff, that you know the subject matter, you've read this chapter of the book. Objectivity. Objectivity means that you do not allow bias or conflict of interest or undue influence of others. So from the point of view of the ACCA, that you do not prefer the needs of the organization over the needs of other stakeholders. Well, for example, when we say whether we should kind of adjust the financial statements for the bank to give us the loan, then we say that it is not objective. We should not overweigh the benefits of our company, our organization. We should not weigh them over the interest of bank to get the report that is unbiased and free of error. The next would be professional behavior. Professional behavior means that you need to comply with relevant laws and regulations and avoid any action that discredits your profession. Integrity means to be straightforward and honest in all professional relationships, so not to lie. And confidentiality, to respect the confidentiality of information acquired. And yes, this is their official definition. You explain the confidentiality by using the word confidentiality. But anyways, I wanted to show you the answers of how you do that, how you apply the principles. So the idea would be something did something wrong. This is the breach of the principle. And then quite often you are asked what to do about that. If the directors, and the keyword is knowingly stated liabilities wrong, it means that they have breached the integrity principle, which is to be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationship. So look, you need to cite the scenario, and of course, like the scenario, it will not be that they did some that. So that's why you use the word if. So you say if knowingly, then this is a breach of integrity, and this is the definition of integrity. Even though CFO is employed by ABC company, is the most important word. ACCA's Code of Ethics requires her to be objective. Objective is the principle, which means not to allow bias and conflict of interest. This is the definition that you need to write of the principle. Or undue influence of others to override professional or business judgments. This means that by trying to manipulate ratios used in the covenants, CFO is not acting objectively, and this is the citation from the scenario. It seems that CFO is unaware of IFRS 9 requirements. This is when in the scenario we see that they did something wrong, they accounted for something wrong. However, ACCA's Code of Ethics states that ACCA members should act with professional competence, which means to maintain professional knowledge and skills at a level required. This is the definition, to ensure that a client or employer receives a competent professional service. So again, what was the breach? What the citation? What was the breach? What was the principle that was breached? And what does it mean? ACCA members have access to sensitive information, and they should act with confidentiality, which means not to allow third parties to access sensitive information. By telling his wife about upcoming merger, this is the citation of the scenario, Mr. Popper breaches the principle. By implying that the accountant might lose the job, so this is a threat, should not comply with the director's instructions to state something incorrectly. The directors are threatening, and this means that it is contrary to professional behavior principle. So that is the name of the principle. And that is the definition, which is to comply with all relevant laws and regulations and avoid any action that discredits the profession. So if you're going to take your SBR exam and you need to talk about ethics, well, you will need to write this ethical part. Just try to a little bit memorize, and actually in your exam, it will be easier for you to just revisit that. It will be fresh knowledge, recent knowledge, and that will allow you to answer the question on ethical principles correctly. Well, yes, and if the question asks you for action, please do not forget to state the action, which is to explain, to remind the code of ethics, to talk to the superior, to address to those charged with governance, and to finally to contact the ACCA ethics helpline, or finally to resign if the matter is unsolved. Wow, look, well, that was a very fast talking of this professional marks, and I know that this is overwhelming. So great thing is that you can revisit that you can rewatch this video over again, maybe at a lower speed. I just wanted to tell you as much as I could. And these are the techniques that are going to help you to score your professional marks. And what I suggest you to do is to come up with a plan, like 5 to-dos that you are going to apply in your exam to ensure that you score at least some of professional marks, such as, right, on one hand, on the other hand, don't forget to criticize to get your skepticism mark. Or let's say, don't forget to write report layout if the question specifically asks you for report. And that would ensure that you have the strong chances of actually passing the exam rather than to just taking them. So good luck with them.